Hi folks, I'm so glad you've been able to connect with the message today. My prayer for you is that you experience something of God and of God's heart for you. And as you listen to the sermon, I ask you to consider this one question. What is God stirring in you? I want to share with you reading for today. It's from Matthew 25, verses 1 to 13. 10 young women took their lamps and went to meet the bridegroom. 5 of them were foolish and 5 were wise. When the foolish took their lamps, they took no oil with them, but the wise took flasks of oil with their lamps. As the bridegroom was delayed, all of them became drowsy and slept. But at midnight there was a shout, "Look, here comes the bridegroom. Come out to meet him." Then all of those young women got up to trim their lamps, and the foolish said to the wise, "Give us some of your oil, for our lamps are going out." But the wise replied, "No, there will not be enough for you and for us. You'd better go to the dealers and buy some for yourselves." While they went to buy it, the bridegroom came, and those who were ready went into the wedding banquet, and the door was shut. Later the other young women came also, saying, "Lord, Lord, open to us." But he replied, "Truly I tell you, I do not know you. Keep awake, therefore. You do not know neither the day nor the hour." Wow. So today we are going to look at focus, and in particular, long-term focus. As we would probably realise, focus is our ability to centre our attention and our energy on a specific task or an object or an activity for a sustained length of time. These days, many people's lives are tethered to computers and smartphones, which are unending sources of distraction. And research has shown that over the past couple of decades, people's attention spans have shrunk in measurable ways. So when we are being bombarded by different tasks, notifications or emails, or the temptation to look up information whenever you want about whatever you like, what is the temperature in Chapel Hill right now? You can look that up and you can find that out. That temptation is there all the time. Or the many games and activities on our smart devices. Our attention is being diverted every few seconds. When people are engaged and challenged in an activity, it's called focused attention. When people are engaged but not necessarily challenged, it's just called rote activity. And so the difference being, if we're challenged by something and engaged in it, like writing an assignment or you're learning a new skill, you can sit there and put your time and energy into that, as opposed to something, like washing up, mowing the lawn. You can listen to the TV while you're washing up. You can talk to somebody. Like, these are rote activities. We can get distracted more easily in those. So people who are more focused when the task is challenging, and people are less focused when it's not challenging. So that makes sense. In 2004, the average attention span was measured to be 2.5 minutes. And throughout the years, it became shorter. In 2012, the average attention span was 75 seconds. And I just wonder, Holly, if you could get a stopwatch out, because we might actually spend a bit of time doing the next one. And 5 years ago, the average attention span was 47 seconds. So we might just sit now for 47 seconds and just see if you can focus your thoughts on one thing for the next 47 seconds, okay? Ta-da! Congratulations. Who was able to focus on the one thing for 47 seconds? Wow! What about at home? Anyone? 47 seconds. Who couldn't? Yeah, no, me neither. No, me neither. Okay, well, there you go. We are being distracted more and more, and it is affecting our ability to focus. There is a correlation between the frequency of switching attention and stress. So the more we switch our attention to another thing, the more stressful we become. So in a laboratory where they had all of the measuring apparatus, it was noted that when people multitask, it affects us or it drains us in two ways. One, the people who multitask experience more stress and their blood pressure rises. And also, the best of our mental activity or capacity is spent refocusing on something. So if we are sitting at our computer typing a Word document, a notification comes up for an email, we stop that, we attend to the email and come back. The very best of our capacity, our mental capacity, is being spent on that focusing and refocusing. And so, with devices and games in our pockets, we have ended up with a generation of highly stressed and unfulfilled people. Generation Z is the most stressed and the most anxious generation. But it's not just the younger generations that experience this. Research has shown that it is present in all generations. So even writing this sermon, which I did on a Wednesday, I heard the rubbish truck come and I thought, I've got to get up and put those wheelie bins back in, halfway through a sentence. And then I looked over and saw my printer and thought, there's that document I printed yesterday. I should get up and put that away. So it's not just like our devices, our digital technology that distracts us. It is everywhere, vying for our attention. But at the other end of the focus spectrum is the capacity to concentrate one's ability and attention on a challenging task, not just for a long time, but for long-term benefit. So a great example of this comes from scientific researchers. Many scientific researchers have worked day in and day out to pursue goals that will take years or decades or even generations to achieve. Their progress is often painstakingly slow and they receive very little feedback, and they know that success isn't always guaranteed. However, despite those odds, they find enough meaning and motivation to keep towards those long-term objectives. And because of that, we've benefited from many life-saving advances in, vaccines and CT scanning and antibiotics and space exploration and psychological intervention. None of these things would have happened if people weren't prepared to put in the hard yards, to remain focused for the long-term results. So it's clear that people who maintain the long-term focus of goals can achieve much bigger things than those who switch from thing to thing to thing and give up after the slightest setback. So in this parable today, Jesus helps his disciples to understand what it means to wait for his second coming. Because it's a long-term commitment. It is a goal that requires us to be focused for the long term. So while the church, as we know, the church celebrates Advent, the 4 weeks leading up to Christmas, and this year that starts on the 1st of December. And Advent simply means preparing for someone or something important. And while the church calendar might celebrate Advent leading up to Christmas, in reality we are already in Advent 24/7 because we are awaiting and preparing for the return of Christ. So the universal church is in a perpetual Advent season. And this is succinctly stated in both Nicene and Apostles' Creeds. So in the Nicene Creed, we can read, "He will come again with glory to judge the living and the dead." And in the Apostles' Creed, we read, "He ascended into heaven and sits at the right hand of God, the Father Almighty. From there he shall come to judge the living and the dead." So every day until Christ's return, we are in Advent, We are waiting for and preparing for Jesus to come again to judge the living and the dead. And so Jesus told this parable to inform his disciples that readiness is not just something that can be achieved in our beliefs, but it requires action. Being ready for his return requires long-term focus and long-term preparation. So the 10 young women took their lamps and went to meet the bridegroom. 5 were foolish and 5 were wise. So in the opening of the parable, we meet the key characters, the bridegroom and the 10 young women. The bridegroom represents Jesus. The 10 young women represent the disciples or the church. The number of women is irrelevant. It's usually, most likely, a normal number of attendants for a wedding in Jesus' day. First, the parents would arrange the marriage with the consent of the bride and groom. Next, the couple had an engagement period of many months. Then, on the day of the wedding, the groom would go to his bride's house to claim his bride from her parents, and his friends would accompany him. After that, the marriage ceremony would take place at the bride's house. Then, on the evening of the day of the wedding, the groom would take his bride home, and this involved a nighttime procession through the streets. There, the bride and groom would consummate their marriage at the groom's home the night of the wedding ceremony. And then there would be a banquet that would often last as long as 7 days. And this often took place at the groom's home. So the scene of this parable refers to this final stage when the bride's attendants are waiting for them to come back to his house where the banquet will begin. All 10 of the attendants knew that the groom was coming, but only 5 of them were actively ready for him. When the foolish took their lamps, they took no oil with them, but the wise took flasks of oil with their lamps. Now, from this passage, we recognise that wise people not only anticipate the advent or the coming of Jesus, they also prepare for it. And in this story, some of the attendants took extra oil for the lamps because they just had no idea when he was coming. However, the foolish people anticipate Christ's return, but do not prepare for it. Being prepared is what distinguishes the wise from the foolish. Many Jews in the day of Jesus were anticipating the coming of the Messiah. Many of the Pharisees and the rabbis knew that Jesus was coming. They knew, they had an awareness. They were anticipating it. They just weren't prepared. Even though John the Baptist and Jesus' disciples urged them to be prepared. That is not unlike today. Many of us know. We can read the creeds. We've grown in the church. We understand Christ will come. We get it. But I wonder how many of us are actively prepared for it. Jesus goes on to say, as the bridegroom was delayed, all of them became drowsy and slept. But at midnight there was a shout, "Look, here is the bridegroom. Come out to meet him." Then all of those young women got up and trimmed their lamps. And the foolish said to the wise, "Give us some of your oil, for our lamps are going out." And the wise replied, "No, there will not be enough for you and for us. You'd better go to the dealers and buy some for yourselves." While they went to buy it, the bridegroom came, and those who were ready went in with him to the wedding banquet, and the door was shut. And later the other young women came also, saying, "Lord, Lord, open to us." He replied, "I don't know you. So keep awake, because you neither know the day or the hour." The groom reprimanded them for being foolish and not taking enough oil with them in their lamps. So the question is, what does it mean for us? What does it mean to not only believe and anticipate the coming of Christ, to judge the living and the dead, but to actually prepare for it as well? How do I be prepared for the return of Christ? How do we keep our lamps trimmed and our oil topped up? How do we move from a cognitive understanding of the return of Christ, articulated clearly in the creeds, to a whole of life preparation for it? How do we guard our hearts and our minds against distractions so that we can focus our attention and our energy on the long-term benefits, even if we see very little visible results in the meantime? And what does that look like in a disciple's life? What does it mean for our day-to-day life? That we are to hold focus and be prepared for the second coming of Jesus and not be distracted by this, that, and the other. Well, I've got good news for you. Firstly, most of the New Testament talks about this. So you could pick any book in the New Testament and you will find some answers that will help you be prepared. Secondly, we will be looking at, from here to Christmas, over these next 5 weeks, looking at different passages from the lectionary readings, and they will help us to be prepared for the coming of Christ. In the meantime, there is a fantastic passage in Romans 12 I want to look at today. This is where Paul paints this incredible picture of ways that we can actively prepare for the return of Christ. And the reason this passage is so great is because it is descriptive. It is not prescriptive. In other words, what I mean is this is a passage that describes Jesus. And it invites us not just to read the passage and go, oh, okay, that's lovely, but to actually allow these qualities of Christ to transform us. That's the ongoing conversion experience. It's not a list of things that we tick off. We won't read through Romans 12 and go, okay, I do that one. Yeah, I'm not bad at that one. I could probably work a bit more on that and give that one a circle. But the rest, yeah, I'm pretty good at those. It's not about that. It describes Jesus. And it exhorts us, the church, to let those qualities of Jesus become us so that we are known by these qualities. So when people look at you, they will go, oh, you're a person who embodies all of this, and they will see Christ in us. These qualities point to Jesus, and the more we focus on our hearts on Jesus, the more we become like him. So this morning I'd like us to read this passage responsively. I'm going to read the part that's less bold, and you can read the part that is in the bold. So guys at the back, I'll do the clicking and change the slides. As we read, I'm going to pause on each slide, and you can let those words ruminate in you and just consider, is there anything here on the screen that I need to be intentional in working on? So let's read this together. Don't just pretend to love others. Hate what is wrong. Love each other with genuine affection. Never be lazy. Rejoice in our confident hope. When God's people are in need, be ready to help them. Bless those who persecute you. Be happy with those who are happy. Live in harmony with each other. And don't think you know it all. Never pay back evil with more evil. Do all that you can to live in peace with everyone. Dear friends, never take revenge. For the scriptures say, instead, if your enemies are hungry, feed them. In doing this, you will heap burning coals of shame on their heads. But conquer evil by doing good. So here, Paul invites us to embody those characters of Jesus and let them transform us. So I wonder, as you read through them, if you noticed any of these aspects of Christ that might be lacking a little bit in you. I wonder if, like me, you have been distracted from focusing your attention and your energy on doing the hard work to become like Christ and reflect him to the world. Next week, we'll be looking at the following parable from this, and it describes yet another way that we can prepare for the arrival of Christ. And as I said earlier, over the following weeks after that, we will continue to look at different ways we can prepare. This sets a foundation for the next few weeks of our sermons. So let me ask you, what can you do to help you remain focused for the long term so that you are prepared for the return of Christ? I want to give you a few moments to sit and to consider and to ponder, and I'm going to close that time of reflection by reading a benediction of Paul's that's found in Jude. Now to him who is able to keep you from falling and to make you stand without blemish in the presence of his glory with rejoicing. To the only God, our Saviour, through Jesus Christ our Lord, be glory and majesty and power and authority before all time and now and forever. Amen.
Hi everyone, I hope you enjoyed today's sermon and that it spoke to your heart. If you want to keep up to date on the sermon series, then hit the subscribe button and subscribe to our channel. We post videos every Sunday. Here at Chapel Hill, we have a lot of fantastic programs. We run a youth group, a faith life group, play group, and so much more. If you're interested in getting involved or simply just checking us out, then head to our website, which will be in the description box below, or follow our socials. It's at Chapel Hill Uniting Church on YouTube, Facebook, and Instagram. And if you're interested in some of the things that we're doing in the day-to-day life of the church, then keep watching for the notices. I hope you have a fantastic week. May God bless you.